The collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991 was one of the most significant geopolitical events of the 20th century, marking the end of the Cold War and reshaping global politics. The breakdown of this vast socialist state, which once encompassed 15 republics and stretched across Eurasia, was the result of a complex interplay of political, economic, social, and ideological factors. This document explores the intricate history leading to the dissolution of the Soviet Union, examining the reasons behind its collapse and its profound global implications. The Soviet Union was established in 1922 following the Russian Revolution of 1917 and the subsequent Civil War. Under the leadership of Vladimir Lenin, the Bolsheviks consolidated power and established a one-party state based on Marxist-Leninist principles. The Soviet Union aimed to create a classless society, abolish private property, and promote equality. Despite its ideological vision, the USSR's early years were marked by political purges, forced collectivization, and a rigid command economy. These policies laid the foundation for a centralized and authoritarian regime. Under Joseph Stalin, the Soviet Union underwent rapid industrialization and collectivization. While these policies transformed the USSR into a major industrial power, they came at a tremendous human cost. Millions perished in famines caused by forced collectivization, while political purges eliminated perceived enemies of the state. The authoritarian nature of Stalin's rule established a culture of fear and conformity, suppressing dissent and stifling innovation. Although the USSR emerged victorious in World War II and became a global superpower, the rigid and repressive system sowed seeds of future instability. After World War II, the Soviet Union and the United States emerged as rival superpowers, leading to the Cold War. The USSR expanded its influence in Eastern Europe and supported communist movements worldwide. The arms race, including the development of nuclear weapons, strained the Soviet economy. While the USSR projected an image of strength, underlying economic inefficiencies and technological lag compared to the West began to emerge. The Cold War rivalry also forced the Soviet Union to allocate vast resources to its military-industrial complex, diverting funds from domestic development. The leadership of Leonid Brezhnev, 1964 to 1982, was characterized by economic stagnation and political conservatism. The Soviet economy, reliant on a centralized planning system, struggled to meet the needs of its population. Corruption and inefficiency became endemic, while technological innovation lagged behind the West. The oil boom of the 1970s temporarily masked these issues, but the economy remained fundamentally flawed. Brezhnev's era also saw growing disillusionment among Soviet citizens, as the gap between the state's propaganda and reality became increasingly apparent. In 1985, Mikhail Gorbachev became the General Secretary of the Communist Party. Recognizing the urgent need for reform, Gorbachev introduced policies of perestroika, economic restructuring, and glasnost, political openness. Perestroika aimed to decentralize the economy and introduce market-like reforms, while glasnost encouraged greater freedom of expression and transparency. These reforms, however, had unintended consequences. Glasnost revealed the extent of corruption and inefficiency within the Soviet system, while perestroika disrupted existing economic structures without creating viable alternatives. The Soviet Union was a multi-ethnic state, and its 15 republics had distinct cultural and historical identities. Under glasnost, suppressed nationalist sentiments resurfaced. Movements in the Baltic states, Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania demanded independence, while unrest grew in other republics such as Georgia, Ukraine, and Armenia. The central government's inability to address these demands without resorting to force weakened its authority. Ethnic tensions and regional discontent further eroded the cohesion of the Soviet state. By the late 1980s, as the Soviet economy was in crisis, shortages of basic goods, rising inflation, and declining living standards fueled public discontent. The command economy, designed for rapid industrialization, proved incapable of adapting to a changing global economy. Gorbachev's reforms, while well-intentioned, failed to address these systemic issues. Strikes and protests became more frequent as citizens lost faith in the Communist Party's ability to govern effectively. The Soviet Union faced increasing international pressures during its final years. The costly war in Afghanistan, 1979 to 1989, drained resources and morale. Meanwhile, US President Ronald Reagan's aggressive policies, including increased military spending and support for anti-Soviet movements, intensified the strain on the Soviet economy. The fall of communist regimes in Eastern Europe in 1989, symbolized by the fall of the Berlin Wall, further undermined the USSR's ideological legitimacy. These events demonstrated the weakening grip of Soviet influence and emboldened independence movements within the Union. In August 1991, hardline Communist Party members staged a coup against Gorbachev, aiming to halt his reforms and restore central control. The coup failed due to resistance from Russian President Boris Yeltsin and mass protests. The coup's failure marked a turning point, further discrediting the Communist Party and accelerating the disintegration of the Soviet Union. Yeltsin's rise to prominence signaled a shift in power from the Soviet government to the Russian Federation. Throughout 1991, republics declared independence one by one. The Baltic states were the first to secede, followed by others such as Ukraine, Belarus, and Kazakhstan. The central government's inability to maintain control highlighted the diminishing relevance of the Soviet Union. The creation of the Commonwealth of Independent States, CIS, in December 1991 marked a formal recognition of the USSR's dissolution. On 25 December 1991, Gorbachev resigned as President of the Soviet Union, and the red flag was lowered from the Kremlin for the last time. The collapse of the Soviet Union had profound global implications. It ended the Cold War and led to the emergence of the United States as the sole superpower. Former Soviet republics faced the daunting task of transitioning to market economies and democratic governance, with varying degrees of success. The collapse also left a power vacuum in regions such as Central Asia and the Caucasus, leading to conflicts and instability. The ideological battle between capitalism and socialism, which had defined the 20th century, came to an end, leaving questions about the future of socialism in a post-Soviet world. The dissolution of the Soviet Union was the result of decades of systemic issues exacerbated by flawed reforms, economic decline, and growing nationalist movements. It serves as a cautionary tale about the dangers of authoritarian governance, economic mismanagement, and the suppression of dissent. While the USSR's collapse marked the end of an era, its legacy continues to shape global politics. Understanding the reasons behind its breakdown offers valuable insights into the challenges of maintaining unity in diverse, complex societies and the importance of adapting to changing political and economic realities.